Hey guys, can you guys hear me? Now go ahead and raise your hand if you can hear me. Great. Someone is telling me I may have been on mute. Max, thank you for the heads up. I think I actually was on mute. Sandy. Okay, good. You guys can hear me now. That's excellent. I'm just saying thank you guys so much for the garages that you sent in. I wanted to show you guys what you guys have been working on. Show off everybody's work. I really liked Anthony's here. He has a lot of detail. He had a simple design for the shape of the garage, but I liked that he added this outer panel. He has these really nice panels for the garage door, and just by having those three different textures, it gives it that simple design, but it really stands out. I'm going to go ahead and put everyone's hands down. There we go. Here's Garen's. I like what he did with the windows there, giving them panes of glass. He has a drawer, and there's two very interesting cars in there. Worked a lot with arcs, I see too. This is nice. And he has this in the back as well, except with the mirrors. Samuel's. Very nice that he has gutters. I thought that was a nice addition. As long as the door in the back for people, the door in the front for the cars. I like how you guys started thinking about functionality when you were bringing in small things like that, a gutter, the door. Those are all going to be really important when you're designing your houses. Nico's, he had this almost industrial design, really, really nice with the detail there, the different floor, that different take on a slanted roof. Elizabeth's, I think she also had a gutter. I liked that, the different textures on the doors. I believe these are bushes. Nice work, Elizabeth. Tegan's, you did a great job. I can tell Tegan spent a lot of time on this. Really nice work. The garage itself has a nice shape, has that door along with, I'm assuming this is the garage door for the cars. But then this overhang and a reflection pool here, it's really nice additions that are similar to what we're going to talk about the different architects doing, adding this natural element. He has this in stone as well. Really beautiful. You know, if these are stairs or more of a waterfall, but it reminded me of some of the architects, the Lego architecture work you did last week. All right, and Mr. D, did you want to talk about any of the modern architecture? Did you say you wanted to talk about that at all? Hey, Mr. D, are you there? I don't believe he's there. Okay, guys. We're just going to jump into the presentation we have today. We're going to be switching back and forth between a presentation on more just some architecture concepts, and also we will be doing some work in SketchUp. We're going to start with this lecture, a little bit of a lecture on architecture, but it's going to be super important when you are designing your houses. And at the end of class, we will get into that. I'm going to mute him. All right. Yeah, so we have the basics of architecture, these three main steps. You start with consultation, and we saw that on Monday when I asked you guys to think of the questions you would need to ask your client if you were building them a garage, how many cars were going to be in the garage, how big they wanted it. Some other things you'd have to consider would be the land that the garage is on. You might want to do a site visit before you even start to design. Is it on a floodplain? Do you have to worry about that? Is it on a place that might have earthquakes? What are the different materials that are going to be available? What's the budget going to be? So these are all questions you would ask during the consultation. Then you start the design process, and there are many steps in this design process where you are coming up with your different models and redesigning them, showing them to people, either to your client or to other architects, getting feedback and coming up with other ideas. You're going to be running into challenges, ways to maybe optimize the strength of your building or minimize the cost, and then how you approach the challenges in your models. And then the construction phase. And this is the last phase that it's after you've built your model, after you built your floor plan, after you built your model, it's actually implementing your plan. Which expert, and you have to think about like which experts do you have to talk to about the construction phase. If you're an architect and not a technician, think about how you would have to incorporate those different aspects of it, the wiring and stuff like that, especially with more technological advances. So design, this is the step we're going to be focusing on today. We're talking about the manipulation of physical characteristics of size, shape, texture, proportion, scale, mass, and color. And so when we're thinking about that, we've been talking a lot about size and shape in SketchUp. That's what we've been learning to do on the computer a lot. You guys have been doing texture a bit too in your own work. And that would just simply be adding the paint in SketchUp. But that's also something to consider when you're an architect with the material that you're using. Proportion is really important, proportion and scale. If you guys haven't done proportions or ratios in math class yet, proportion is considering how big something is in comparison to something else. And a ratio is describing those differences. So if you had a classroom with 10 boys and 5 girls, for every 1 girl, there are 2 boys, right? There are 10 boys and 5 girls. So the ratio of boys to girls is 2 to 1. And there are certain ratios, like the height of a window compared to its length, or the height of an arch compared to its length, that are really pleasing to the human eye. And architects, they study that. What looks the best? When you're placing windows, you know that there are ways that you can place the windows that just look strange. Or in terms of scale, if your door is really small compared to your wall and the windows are all clustered together, that's going to look really strange. Well, architects actually do a lot of work to make sure they don't do anything just on feel. You know, there's a lot of ratios and math that goes into where to place the windows in correspondence to each other. Mass, you have to consider the weight of your building and how you're going to support that weight. We see a lot of skyscrapers around these days, but when they were first being constructed, it took a lot of engineering and architecture to put those giant, massive buildings up in the air, especially with all the glass that they're holding. You had to create those steel structures strong enough to support the height of that building. A lot of modern architects that we're going to go over today, they don't like the idea of being limited by quote-unquote load-bearing walls. They want to be able to make the house perform aesthetically based on how it looks and not necessarily what would be the cheapest or easiest way to support the house's weight. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Color is important. Order. So when we're talking about order, talking about how you are arranging and organizing the elements. So again, how you would arrange the windows on a wall or arrange the rooms in a house. Form follows function. This is an idea of modern architecture. And what it says is that the function comes first. Whatever you're building, what its function is should be the first thing you think of, and the first, that more than the way it looks, that's the most important. Function is the most important. But not only is it the most important, but it's going to influence the form that it takes. And so instead of having simply, you're going to make a shop, but you're going to make it, or you're going to make a building for a certain purpose, you're going to consider that purpose when you're designing what it will look like. And aesthetics, that's just the fancy word for the artist component of architecture. How it looks, how it's put together so that it looks really nice or pleasing to the eye. So this design process, it kind of acts, this is the first step, and the rest of it's kind of a circle. I wish they hadn't have included this define as part of the circle. But you consider what the problem or the challenge is that you're working on right now. You collect information, so you can either do that by talking to the client, researching, seeing what other architects have done to solve that problem. You brainstorm and analyze ideas. This can come in the way of sketching out ideas or even, coming up with a floor plan. Develop solutions, build a test model, present this to others, and then based on their feedback, you can start to improve your design. And by quote unquote improving your design, that means you either go back to collecting more information, you go back to brainstorming and developing, and then that is kind of the circle there. And the steps that the architects take, they might start with a sketch of the idea that they have for the house in their head, how it will end up looking, and show that to other architects or the client. And after the client okays that, then they'll create more of a technical floor plan. And they might have to go through this process 4 or 5 times before they're given the okay to start on this next step, which would be to build a 3D model like we've seen. And then there's this final step, which would be to create an actual paper model. And this one's very fancy. It has the lights in it as well and these little trees, but it's just an actual representation. And these are not for the same building. I tried hard to find images all for the same building because that would be cool to see, but I could not find any of those. All right. Do we have any questions? Oh, Max, I'm sorry that you sent in your garage and we didn't see it. I can look it up in Edmodo right now. Oh, there it is. Great. Oh, I see there's a different person there. Very cool. There is not a lot of room. I would not want to drive into that garage. That'd be a tight fit. But no, this looks really nice. I really like that you added a storage space in there as well. I know we talked about that. We did not see a lot of storage spaces. And then your door, is that a glass door? I can't quite tell. Very cool. I like it. All right, guys. So we're going to jump out of the lecture for a minute. I want you guys to wake up a little bit. And we're going to learn about an easier way to do the follow me tool, or an easier trick, especially when we're considering a house. So what we're going to do is I'm going to build a house with a more complex shape. Right? And let me see if I can connect all of these edges. To connect them, I'm just going to erase these lines in the bottom here so that it's all one. Actually, what I'm going to do, just to make sure that these edges all line up, is I'm just going to draw with a line with my line tool. So I'm just making a bit of a complicated floor plan for a house. And now that I have that, I'm going to erase all of these lines that we don't need, right? Because I just need the outside walls. We're not going to worry about a floor plan right now. All right, so now I have this more complex floor of my house. I'm going to pull it up. And we can talk about in a little bit how we would build a roof for this house. But what I want to worry about now is how to build a trim. So first thing, I'm going to build a door. And then, as we learned last week, I'm going to select just these top three and use the offset tool to create a door frame. And don't worry, guys, if you are trying to keep up and I'm going really quickly, I'll do this again and give you the opportunity to follow along. I just wanted to show you guys what we're doing. So to create this frame, I'm going to use this shape and the Follow Me tool. And if you know from the past, so I just drew a line on that door frame, and I would be able to just pull around the whole house. But since the house has so many edges, it's going to be really difficult to move my screen so that I can see all the edges. So what I can actually do, what's easier and more accurate, is I can move my screen so I see the bottom of the house and just select before I click the Follow Me tool. I have the selection tool. I have nothing else selected. And then I can simply just select just these edges. You do not want to get a face as well, or else it will not work. And select them all until they meet in a completed path. And now that they are all selected, I can use the Follow Me tool. I just use that. When I click the Follow Me tool, the blue line will go away, but don't worry, and just click that shape, and it knew that my path was highlighted. Remember, I highlighted the path before I hit the Follow Me tool. When I clicked the Follow Me tool, all I had to do was click the shape. And it added a bottom trim to my house. Looks nice, right? Alright guys, now I want you guys to try it out. I'm going to start over from the beginning. We have about 10 minutes. Your shape does not have to be as complicated as mine, but I do want it to go ahead and make a rectangle. And then I do want you to add some sort of additional shape to that. Alright, so just with the line tool to make sure it all lines up, add something to your rectangle. Then I want you to select this line and delete it to make one large surface. The next step is to use the push-pull tool to pull your house up. And then we're going to add a door. Just with the rectangle tool. Use our selection key to select the top 3 edges. And then use the offset tool to create that door frame. We're going to use push-pull to pull this out a little bit. And then we're going to use our door frame to create, I think I pulled that out a little bit too much, the shape. We're going to draw our shape on the door frame and use that for the trim. So I'm just going to draw a straight line. I'm going to put it a little bit lower. Right there on my door frame. I'm going to zoom out orbit so I can see the bottom of my building, and then use the select tool to select these bottom edges. I'm pressing shift so that I can add multiple edges. If I click something that I don't want, I simply click it again. Once I have my whole path selected, I'm going to use the follow me tool, click that, and click that shape that I want, that shape we drew on the doorway. And you can see that the follow me tool worked and completed the trim around the house. Go ahead and raise your hand once you've gotten this to work. Send me a question if you're a little bit confused. Great, Jeremy, that's awesome. I'm going to give everyone about 3 or 4 minutes to try. Once you have your shape, pull it up. Make your door frame with the rectangle and then the offset tool. When you push out that door frame, you're going to draw a line across it there, and that rectangle is going to be your shape. Select the bottom edges of your building as your path, then click the Follow Me tool. Then you can just simply click on that shape, and it should automatically create this border for you. All right, I'm going to give everyone a few more minutes to do that. Make sure you raise your hand or let me know. Oh, Max, great. See that you did it. For those of you who are confused, I'm going to just do it one more time off to the side, but with just the simple polygon shape. So if you're confused, you can watch my screen for a little bit. I should be going through the steps. All right. Great, Max, Sherry. Excellent, guys. I will be showing you guys this step one more time, so it's okay if you didn't get it, but hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. It's just a little easier way to use that tool. Come back to that later. So now we're going to take some time to talk. Hold on one moment. All right, we're just going to talk about some of the houses that you guys worked on in your lab this week. So starting out with the Farnsworth house, made by, I apologize for my pronunciation here for any German speakers, but Ludwig Miles van der Rohe, I think, who was born in March 27th, 1886 in Germany, and he moved to America right after World War II. Then he lived until August 17th, 1969, and he was one of the leaders of the modern movement in architecture. He liked to use the steel frame, which we'll see in this next house. And he was a proponent of skin and bones architecture, which pretty much just means less is more. He liked the idea of free and open spaces with minimal presence of structure. He finished the Farnsworth House in 1951, and it's an iconic masterpiece of the international style of architecture, still highly revered today. Has won numerous awards and accolades, and is considered, it's under the protection of a historical preservation site, I believe. It is in Illinois, and it uses indoor-outdoor. It's an indoor-outdoor architectural shelter, deliberately built on a floodplain to kind of intertwine with nature. It was right next to a river, and he liked the idea of building it on that floodplain to really interact with nature. It features floor-to-ceiling glass, and then it has this floor and ceiling slab held together by that exposed steel structural frame. Very, very simple architecture here in the way that it looks, but very difficult to put together. It almost seems to float, especially from this angle here, and it really is just one room. So this is this incredibly revered piece of architecture that's just out in the middle of nature, very serene. But it was made as a one-room weekend retreat for Dr. Edith Farnsworth. And what is interesting is this structure actually ended up costing twice as much as what Dr. Farnsworth wanted to pay. And so she ended up taking Ludwig to court because she did not feel like she had to pay that much. And this is just that, along with the fact that it cost so much to heat this house because of all of the glass, and these steel pillars would constantly rust. It's just exemplary of the fact that there's this disconnect between modernist architecture and the reality of users' lives. This is a very intimidating open space with all of that glass to really live comfortably. It was far too expensive for what Dr. Farnsworth wanted, but Ludwig had this idea and this dream, and he knew that it would be very impressive if he could build it the way he wanted. And as the artist, wasn't the best at working with who he was working for or considering her needs in terms of these steel pillars not rusting or being able to heat the house. This is again, I apologize for my pronunciation, but the Villa Savoye. It is right outside of Paris, France. I'm again going to butcher this, but Le Corbusier is the architect, and he is actually Swiss-born. So I was trying to say that in a French accent, but that is a Swiss name. He is an internationally known, very important and vocal champion of modern architecture. And what makes him unique is he wasn't just known as an architect, he was known as a writer and an instructor. So he was a very important figure in starting this architecture movement because he was able to vocalize, well, he had very strong communication skills, he was able to vocalize kind of the standards of the movement. Villa Savoye was part of a white purist villas series that was all around Paris, France. And it was kind of just an interesting side note because many architects actually, in addition to function and to aesthetic value, their work takes on a symbolic value. And what he wanted was that this house, it was a private country house, he wanted it to be the physical representation of total purity. That was his goal going into that. Keep that in mind as we see it. So here is the building. Here is the Lego one that you guys got to work on. And here are his 5 points. Now these are not just for the building. These are just his 5 points in general for modern architecture. Pilotis, which these are columns and pillars that work to elevate the building and extend the garden beneath. And we see that he has implemented them in this building here. 2, a functional roof. So these are all the things that a modern building would have, one that he would create. A functional roof, and we see that a little bit here. He liked the idea of being able to reclaim the space that the house occupies back for nature, so that the roof could just simply be an extension of the nature underneath. As if you flew over the house, you wouldn't even be able to tell the house was there. So we don't quite get that with this house, but there is a hanging garden on the top. He liked the idea of an open floor plan relieved of load-bearing walls, because that way he'd be able to place his walls aesthetically. Long horizontal windows that let in illumination and ventilation, and freely designed facades. And if you guys think of classic architecture, classic uh, temples, like Roman architecture, those really intricate drawings that are kind of carved in above the columns or on the columns, those are examples of facades. They're the face of the building, quote unquote, the front of the building. He preferred a really simple, almost just skin of the building. Didn't like a lot of intricacy. For this house in particular, there was a lot of glass, spiral staircase. You can see that in there. He liked to incorporate these different, really geometrical shapes into his building. Open rooms. He did have that hanging garden. And he believed in combining colors. You can see here, this was mainly just a white building, and then it had this green on the inside. I know it might be hard to tell, but you can see it a little bit there. And that green was supposed to, quote unquote, mirror the empathy of the grass. So there's a lot of symbolism in this building for him. And this building, it looks really cool. It still looks futuristic. Someone in my last webinar pointed this out. This was made almost 80 years ago. And there's just something that's very compelling about it, very clean and beautiful, and it is still held in high revere as a wonderful work of architecture. But again, this was supposed to be a family home, and it, looks very lovely, but it's also pure white in the middle of a very far away meadow. So they did run into some problems there, as well as this house went up as they were building it. The price just skyrocketed as well. The costs skyrocketed as well. So again, there's that disconnect. The architect wants to fulfill the vision in his head, even if it doesn't always match up with the realities. And here's the last house we're going to talk about today, a very beautiful house from an incredible architect named Frank Lloyd Wright. And this is a house, not just a waterfall. He is recognized as one of the greatest architects of the 20th century, and he practices something called organic architecture, where the building is actually incorporated into the landscape. And he built this house. You can see it here. There's a better view here. He built it into and above a waterfall. And he built it as a vacation home. And when the man who he was building it for came and saw this design, that the house would actually be on a waterfall, he asked Frank Lloyd Wright why. And Frank Lloyd Wright's response was, "I want you to live with the waterfall, not just to look at it, but for it to become an integral part of your lives." And he really did aim to make the terrain an integral part of his design. Here, architecture is the triumph of human imagination over materials, methods, and men to put man into possession of his own earth, which is just a really lovely quote, and talking about how we are using everything, all of our ability to really stretch what buildings and what our shelter can be. Using, if you don't consider all of the different materials you have, if you don't really use all the technological advances that we have, you're not going to be able to kind of master all of the options that there are out there, the creative field. And this house is definitely my favorite of the three. Just a very beautiful house. It's composed, mostly when you have houses with balconies, they're only a small feature of a house. Well, this house is mainly balconies. And there are inside parts and outside terraces for each level of the balcony. And that structurally is just incredibly impressive, the way it all lines up. All right. So does anyone have any questions after running through that? I know that was, oh, great, we do have a question. Hey, Colton, what's your question?
Oh, I don't have a question. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no problem. Hey, Jeremy, what's your question?
Hey, sorry, I'm kind of sick right now, but
Oh, no
I
problem.
like how the other two, like, were just kind of white, and this is more of a question, it's more of a statement, but I like how this one kind of blends in more with what it's supposed to be around. I wonder if that's what he was aiming for. What do you think?
I really agree, Jeremy. I think a big part of Frank Lloyd Wright's uh, goal was just that, was to really embrace nature around and have nature be a complement to the house as well as the house be a complement to nature. Whereas this house here, he really liked the idea of white as an example of purity. But um, to me, that really stands out in that meadow as opposed to just being able to blend in with the nature. And this one as well, you do get that brown a little bit on the inside, but it is, starkly white. They painted those steel forms white. So it's really interesting. And color is a big thing to consider. I think that we have a technical term here, polychromy, and there's just so much emotion tied into color. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know if I would want to live in this house or in this house. This one really puts me off that the walls are all made of glass. And this one kind of reminds me of a Star Wars house. But that being said, I definitely admire their beauty and their architectural. They are wonders of works. I just would only want to live in the Frank Lloyd Wright house. This one would be a dream house. Very beautiful. I'd like your guys' opinions on those. Steven, I will definitely put these pictures on Edmodo so you could look at them. And I'm glad that you are interested in them. Okay, so now that we've learned a little bit more about modern architecture and the things that you really have to consider, um, because you might end up with this incredible house that is really working almost against physics, but it might just be unlivable, be way too hard to heat, or make the user uncomfortable, not be family friendly. So those are just all these different things that you have to keep in mind. We're going to move back into SketchUp, and we are going to work on building a house. I have made slides that kind of go through and show you step by step how we are going to put this house together. And so I'm hopefully going to find a way to put these slides online so that you can have them. But for now, I'm going to try to be going with you guys for the rest of this 15 minutes so that we can all be working on it together. I will warn you, we do only have 15 minutes. It takes about 10 minutes to make the house, so I am going to be going pretty quickly. This video will be available for you guys if you get lost at one point, but I would like to promote you guys working along with me as best as you can. We're going to start by making a rectangle. I'll give everyone a minute to get back to SketchUp. And I would like to emphasize that I want you guys to be working on this house with me, but I want you guys to make your own house. This is just practicing some of the skills we've learned so that you understand how to apply it to making a house. when you guys make your own house, I want you to consider, I don't want you guys to just start sketching randomly and admit, well, there's nothing wrong with that, but maybe as a preliminary step, but really approach it like you would an architect building a house. Go through those different steps. Think about the functionality. Think about what you want and how you would design a house to fulfill that. All right, so we're going to start by building a rectangle, and we're going to make it 1,000 millimeters by 500 millimeters. Oh, correction. 10,000 millimeters by 5,000 millimeters. And to that, we're going to start another rectangle in a corner of that, start pulling it out, and then make that one 5,000 by 5,000. Then we're going to erase that edge. The next step is to pull this new shape up into a house. Now what we're going to do is work on pulling up a roof. You'll see that we have this untraditional shape, and whenever you're considering making a roof, what you're going to want to do is create the long shapes across that meet in the middle. So we want a line kind of that splits this shape in the middle and meets on this diagonal in the middle. To do that, start here, find the midpoint, pull it out, and then you're going to want to use the midpoint on this side as a reference point. So I'm not clicking. I'm just hovering over this midpoint so that when I pull my mouse this way, I get that inference line. And now I have the red line of what my line will actually be and that green inference, so I know that that is where I have to end that line to get my two midpoints to connect, my midpoint here and my midpoint here. Then I'm going to connect these lines to that midpoint. The next step is to use the selection key and click this line, hold down the shift key and click this line. We're going to use this to pull up and create the roof. With the move key, simply pull up along that blue axis, that blue dotted line. And now you have a bit of a house. The next step is to orbit so that you see the bottom of the house. What we're going to do now is create kind of a roof overlay, as well as create the inside of the house. To do that, we're going to use the offset tool. Simply click, create one band to be the roof overlay, and the second band, is going to be the wall. I made my roof overlay a little bit thicker than the wall, which I want pretty thin. And what's going to happen is that wall is going to stay, but these other two are going to be pushed up. First, the outer one will be pushed up. Using the push-pull tool, this outer one will be peeled up kind of, and I'm going to leave a little room. I'm not going to go all the way to the top so that we get that nice hangover of the roof. And we can even pull it out a little bit to create almost a gutter effect. Or you can use your move tool and pull it out this way. All right, but the next step is to push up on this section. You don't want to go too far. See those two different colors? Keep it just at the border of them. so that now you have an interior to your house as well. To get a floor again, all you have to do is draw a line to complete that surface. And now you have the basics of your house. If you want to make this roof pretty, I know I'm moving really fast now, guys, sorry about that, but just trying to get through all the material, and this video will be posted. We're going to use the line tool to create more of a roof shape here. So I'm going to start from here on the edge. I'm going to tell the computer by kind of moving along here, I'm saying that I'm searching for an inference point. And then it gives me this parallel to edge inference point. And I want to go to that endpoint there, that midpoint. So I want it to be parallel to edge and on that midpoint. And I'm going to do the same on this side. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to find the parallel point. There we go. So now that I have those two parallel, I can use my push-pull tool and push that in. And then erase this line. And you'll see that I got rid of that inner triangle and now have that nice roof overlay. I'll do that again over on this side real fast, a little bit faster just to show you guys because we still have a little bit more to do. Using two inferences, the parallel and that midpoint. And again, it's always trickier to get it to work this way. There we go. And simply push that in. So now our roof is complete. And we have that nice shape there, traditional roof. What we can do is add a door, and we're going to add that trim that we learned how to do before. What I want you guys to do when you are building your own houses are to use the guides that we learned about. So I'm creating a guide now so I know exactly what halfway down my house looks like. I'm starting from that center point there, using the tape measure tool. And there we go. And then so you can add more guidelines. I am just going to free draw this door because we are running out of time. It is not quite in the center, as we can tell. Try to do that a little bit better. And then draw my door frame. All right, and now I'm doing the trim again, where I draw my shape. And that's going to be my shape. Now what else do I need for Follow Me tool? I need a path. And I'm going to show Follow Me the path I want using multi-selection. Being very careful to finish that whole path, and then the Follow Me tool and click that shape. And now my house has trim. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about, I'm going to jump, since we're almost out of time, I'm going to jump to the presentation, is creating these windows. You can create a window really easily using the offset tool, and just doing it a couple times will give it a really neat effect. You can pull out the outer edge of the window, kind of push this side in a little bit, and you get a nice 3D effect there. And then if you select that, you can make it a component. As a window, and if you're using that guidelines, you're able to place windows. And again, I just double clicked on the line that this was on. You're able to place windows according to those guidelines using your components really easily. And also then if you wanted to add glass to the components, it'd be pretty easy, because if you add glass to one, it adds them to all of them. All right, so guys, we are just out of time. I got just to where I wanted to be. Mess around, draw other shapes. This is the house I ended up with. You can draw other windows. Let me know if you have any questions. I will post this video, and I do want you guys to work on this house for the weekend. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. Consider all the different shapes you want. Does anyone have any questions? I hope you guys are inspired by some of those other architect works. Google pictures of houses, honestly, to see those shapes and try to mimic them here. And use the guidelines. It makes everything cleaner. All right, you can see how I was using guidelines here. All right, it is 4:30 and there is a webinar right at 4:30, so I gotta jump off. But good luck, guys, and I will see you on Monday.